welcome to podcast Aunty, and I'm your host Aparna. In today's episode, we are going to uncover a baker's journey. She started her career in the corporate world and then took a bold step to follow her dreams and passion into baking. And today, she is a famous baker in Perth, Australia, and also the owner of Posh Little Cake. Please welcome Jenne Alonso. Hello, Jenny. Welcome to podcast Aunty. How are you today?
Thank you so much. I'm doing really well. Welcome to my studio where all the
Beautiful.
magic happens.
Right. Just for the benefit of our viewers, right? Why don't you tell us your background? What were you into before taking this baking?
Yeah. Okay. Well, as you probably would know, Aparna, I had a different career before I embarked on my baking journey. Um, uh, I won't take a long time on this, but I had a different career beforehand. I studied marketing and Asian studies at Curtin, and with my double degree, I worked for a very big multinational mining company that took me around the world. Very non-creative side, but definitely big part of my knowledge and skill set, which I took away from my 13 years in that global mining company. Was also in marketing, but I learned a lot of the back end processes of how to run an efficient business because I was managing things like stockpile management, invoicing clients, all those intricate points of learning how to run a business. I took away from that part of my career. And when I landed in this situation where I am now of running my own business, I basically applied everything that I learned in a big business perspective into my small business.
Yeah.
Hence, I feel like I was quite privileged to have had that part before I now embark on my creative self-discovery of being a cake designer.
Beautiful. So I look at that as a corporate to confectionery, and it's a beautiful journey, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think in hindsight, I can look at it and be really grateful, but as you'll discover soon, I went through a big journey to get to this point today.
Can't wait to hear all about that. So what inspired you, motivated you to go into baking?
Look, baking has always been a part of me. Ever since I think I was my little girl where I could stand over the counter and look what's going on the kitchen table, which took a long time to get up. I think I had a little step stool for a long time, and I still do now in my kitchen.
I do the same.
But I remember ever since I was a young kid, getting the Philadelphia cheesecake packet, Philadelphia cream cheese packets and unraveling the recipe. I started off from whatever recipes I could find, for free. And at that time, there was no internet or free blogs of recipes everywhere. You either had to look at magazines like the Women's Weekly or get cookbooks or get these free recipes and try it at home. So I think from that perspective, the love of baking was always with me since I was a child.
Wow.
And ever since, I've always baked for my friends and families, my work colleagues. It was something I always spent my own personal time into. So all the R&D, all the ins and outs of knowing and understanding things like your kitchen equipment, it came from the years of experience and failures, in fact. It was all those failures and burnt cakes and cookies which were dumped in the bin, and they all taught me how to be a very versatile, very efficient baker at home. And so from there, baking has always been a big part of my life.
Oh, that's beautiful. Generally kids are all sweet lovers, but your intrigued nature to know the recipe behind, that's something very unique.
Well, that's another big part of why, if you look at my product offerings, I only have a very limited amount of offerings I offer, only because I tried and tested those recipes for almost decades. So I know them like at the back of my hand, and I know what's going to work. So for me, the quality and the consistency of my bakes is what's very important, and what drives, repeat customers, because they know what they're going to get from one bake to another. So
beautiful. Any career change or any new career for that matter comes with some challenges. What are your challenging stories?
Oh goodness, it's funny because I have been doing this. My Posh Little Cakes business has been running for about 7 years now.
Wow.
But it was not a smooth
course.
journey from the beginning. But the biggest challenges I would say is the first one is myself. The first step that I took to register the business officially, because, you know,
What was that point? Sorry, I'm cutting you off, but what did you think at that point?
you know, even at that point, even though I loved baking and I was confident enough to bake for other people and friends, it really took an external person to push me.
Yeah.
And I will always remember him because he made me make that first big step into registering my business. He was a cafe owner in locally, and he asked me if I'd be willing to bake for his cafe. And, you know, that was a really big seed in my self-value and self-worth and that possibility to grow something and knowing that someone else might actually love my baking. So I needed a personal push, from an external perspective. But I would say for anyone who's embarking on any career change moment in their life, you are the biggest hurdle. So having that mindset to take a leap of faith, because if I had never done that, I probably would never have developed Posh Little Cakes to what it is today. So you never know until you give it a go, and you don't want to sit there 10 years later regretting not taking a try. So that's
what
always
was the most difficult part, Jenny?
Look, for me personally, it was a journey that involved working around my small children. I have twins and I have 3 kids. They were all under the age of 2 at one point, so very close in age. I really couldn't think about going back to corporate life anytime soon, after the babies were here. Okay. And so that was a very big shift, of having a career that was all dedicated around my own time. Not so much, but it was my, I studied so hard for it. I worked so hard to get to where I was, and then to think, because of motherhood, it wasn't a natural progression for me. It was almost like I was taken out quite early from that journey of going down a career path, which I thought at that time was it. But then accepting my new role as a mother, as a wife, as a woman in this society where we were told we could have it all. Yeah. But my biggest understanding during those early years was that I couldn't do it all. I could not have all those hats on and be successful at everything I did. And I'm quite a driven person by nature. And to think that I couldn't do it all was a huge setback to my own personal self-worth, ego, whatever you call it. But I know many women have had this journey of embarking on a career and then family, and then trying to figure out how to juggle it all and keep everything afloat and keep everything as sort of your full, developing each of those into its full potential. So I think for me personally, my journey was, how do I balance what I do today in this line of work, and how does that fit into my family life? How does it fit into my personal life? And that took a long time. It took a really long time. And ultimately, I settled with the realization that I can't have it all. Something does give. Something has to give in that 100% puzzle of myself. I can't give 100% to every one of those buckets. They all need to share. And, there are times when my family had to be a lot more understanding of my time away from them, and vice versa. So, being flexible to change, having a very understanding, my husband is very understanding and supportive. So that was also very huge. The huge backbone to what I'm doing today. And now that the children, as they grow, it becomes a little bit different onto the time that they're demanding on me, and they're very appreciative of what I do as well. So.
And what's your fondest memory of any, baking with your mom or family? Anything
when I was younger? I think it was just, my background is Korean, and I'm second generation Korean here. So my parents were both from Korea. they'd never tasted anything of these types of sweets and desserts, which is quite, I would say, Americanized
Yes.
/ Australian sort of cooking. And even here, I've baked some melting moments only because I love
delicious.
eating them, but they're quite a typical Australian cookie that you find in all the cafes. But I love baking them, and it's just something that I've recognized going through my childhood. But that inspiration sort of couldn't come from my parents because they were used to like the Korean treats of rice cakes and
the
fruits and very less, like very non-sweet sort of type of desserts. But for me, I think my biggest love and how I show love to other people is through food.
Yeah.
I'm a feeder by nature, I think. So my love language is acts of service, and this is how I present my love and care for other people is through my baking. And so that drove me a lot personally to constantly come up with or try new recipes, see what works, add that to my repertoire, and constantly practicing it. For me, it's not because I'm good at it that I'm successful at what I do. I think it's because innately I just have a love of doing baking and cake decorating, which, if I look back, it's a very laborious labor of love. And people who think that, it's just pretty cakes and take pictures and you put it on Instagram, that's great. But if you really try it and you want to make a business out of it, you'll realize the hours and hours of trial and error, of managing not only the baking side, but, a small business. Not only all the pretty stuff that I show on my feeds and my website, it's the stock, it's the invoicing, it's the order taking, it's following up with the payments, it's making sure that you have all your stock in ready for that week. It's knowing your capacities of your oven and your fridge and your workflow so that you don't over commit and your time and energy. And then on top of that, it's your time as well.
Yes, exactly.
For the longest time when I was setting up the business, I probably didn't price things to the fact that I should have to value my time. It's like I was working for free for a very long time before realizing that, I had to change a few things. And that's a learning journey that every business has to make.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to things that you make with your hands. Like this is really a labor of love. You're making this with your bare hands, right?
Exactly.
Very different to a service-related industry, for example, where you're charged per hour for the time that you commit to, serving people or even I used to get a salary, right? Like a weekly wage or fortnightly wage.
That was a fixed one.
That was a fixed wage.
Very
and you
assuring,
exactly. You turned up to work and you did your thing. I realized the $1 I earn in my business has so much more intrinsic value than the $1 I earn in a salary with a paycheck. So that was a very big realization. So really, I do this because I love doing it.
Beautiful. And I've tried some of it, and it's amazing.
Thank you.
So let's talk about Posh Little Cakes, right? I think you said you have been in this business have been there for 7 years?
Yes.
7 years. 13 years in corporate and 7 years here. Beautiful. How was it, the first order that came into you?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. How amazing did that feel? Yes, like it wasn't even a friend or someone I knew. It was a total stranger,
really?
Right? And they saw my Instagram feed at that time. And back then, Instagram was quite a funny beast. It's even a bigger beast today, but 7 years ago, Instagram was really relatively new. So all I knew was it was a really great platform to photograph my cakes and use it as a portfolio to show people what I can bake. And that was a really big tool for me to gain word of mouth in the local industry, as well as really get picked up around the world as to my style of cakes, what I baked. But, that was all at home with my little iPhone at that time, knowing the little basics of editing, lighting and things like that, all within the Instagram app.
Yeah.
I didn't use anything fancy. It was literally
Very
make
authentic.
it, bake it, put it on my little, background and take a photo of it and post it. So,
interesting.
so it was a great feeling, of course, when someone totally you don't know comes and orders from you, and that was soon then followed by the experience of getting like repeat customers. That's great. It's just, my local clientele here are amazing. They always are on tab of what I make. And,
So from zero customer to now, I guess you have how many Instagram followers?
Look, I have 266,000 followers, but thank you. But I'm very lucky that I get to create my content, and I think that's a very big driver of why I've been exposed so much, is because I create my own content. Every week I have different content to post, because every cake I make is different to all of my clients. So it's a bit of a content creation / account building role that I have now in my business. But to be honest, I never really used that as a driving force of how I convert those followings into actual sales. Because at the end of the day, the sales is what my business needs to be productive and pay my assistants and pay my salaries and so forth. So it's not the followers. Followers are nice to have. It's almost like a little pat on the back that you are recognized outside my four walls here. But at the end of the day, it's knowing how to convert those followers into real paying clients. And those clients are my local customers. And I rely on a lot of word of mouth and exposure, feedback, everything like that is what's created my stable business revenue. And I focus on them first before my Instagram and social media life.
I think that's why you're famous. I think that's the key, right? Like you work on your product more than showing it to them.
I mean, it works both ways, but at the end of the day, you need
to be the case that matters.
Exactly. It's your core. You need to understand what your core business is, and mine is creating really pretty, consistently delicious, reliable cakes, so that I can you call on me for any orders that you have. So.
And those who don't know Jenny, she's so hardworking. She just doesn't she goes to any bakery. I think even in France. Do you want to tell them how you go to France and learn?
Right. I guess that sort of stems from, I guess, my signature style of my cakes now that I've developed my own style of buttercream cakes, and nearly all of my cakes will have a feature of macarons on there. And they're like homemade. I make them here every week.
Aren't they difficult to make? I don't think every baker can master that.
They are so difficult to make. It's like my finicky French husband. They're very finicky to perfect and to really be consistently baked. Now, having said that, and even though I thought I was a very accomplished home baker, I thought I can make anything that I set my mind to. The first time I tried it, it was an absolute failure, and I think I threw the whole batch into the bin because I was so mad and frustrated. Like, how can this recipe, I followed it to the T, go wrong, right? So I did not make macarons for a very long time. Until one year we went back to France. My husband is French, so we had French family over in Little Orbe, in a little village. But we went there, and I thought, I'm in France. Like, I need to learn how to make macarons here in France. And unfortunately, the little town I was in, basically nobody spoke English. So I was thinking maybe I need to catch a train into Paris and do like an amazing French-speaking macaron class. And that was going to be my goal that trip.
And do you speak French?
I do speak a bit of French. Thank goodness for my high school French. It's all coming up. It's very bad. So I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And I had my whole motivation that trip we went back was to go to Paris and do this course. Now, having said that, my husband was going to be left with two very small children and a mother-in-law. It was the first time I would have been away. And at that time, there was a bit of scary unrest around Europe with random shootings and things in that area. So my husband was a bit worried. until one morning in the local bakery that he goes to, he comes home from the morning baking croissant run, and he goes, well, you don't need to go to Paris. I've just set you up with the local baker. Next Tuesday at 11 o'clock, he's making macarons, so you can go there. And he speaks English.
Oh, I speak English.
Yes.
Wow.
Apparently he was a teacher at some of the restaurants and things like that. So I was like, oh my goodness. So half of me was like, amazing, but my little trip to Paris that I had in my head was like squashed instantly. But having said that, I went to the little baker, the local baker who it was half my studio, the space that he had to work in. It was amazing. I was just basically watching him, taking mad notes because I knew this opportunity would not happen again. And wrote down in my own little handwriting about every step he was doing, and he showed me the recipe and how to make macarons he showed me his commercial kitchen, and I picked up enough notes to then be able to replicate what I learned there back in my home kitchen here. And I did it in my little small oven, domestic oven there. So if you get a good base recipe, there still needs a lot of practice. But once you figure it out, it was one of the pivotal moments in my baking journey where I was now able to make something very unique and an expensive product. If you need to buy it, they're like over $300 a piece. So to be able to incorporate that into my designs was a bit of I guess, unique point to my cakes, and I bake it now every week and incorporate that in all of my orders. So that was a big turning point in my life. Being able to invest in myself, take an opportunity to learn and then master it, because that was still hours of R&D work back in my Perth kitchen to be able to get that consistently successful.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So what are those key learnings that have you had?
Well, okay. So from a technical bakery point of view, from a home kitchen, knowing the foundations of any recipe. So things like beating speed. What does creaming of butter and sugar look like to get it to the right stage to be able to then add the flour and the wet ingredients? Technicalities of the baking. So for me, I don't know if a lot of you know, I'm a self-taught baker, so I've done everything by trial and error. But not putting anything. Not saying that it would have been different if I went to patisserie school or anything like that. For me, I know that I've committed hours and hours to my own craft. So for someone else to replicate what I do is going to be a little bit difficult, because I know how many hours I've invested in myself over the last, 30 years of baking for them to sort of, catch up to where I am. Again, when you go to patisserie school, you'll learn a lot faster and things like that. Yeah. So I do what I do very well. I don't bake everything, and that's what I've also just realized. I'm not going to be a baker for all of the repertoire of pastries that can be made, but I will be very good at what I do. So so that was
those are the learnings.
Yeah, the learnings would be know your equipment, your kitchen equipment, your oven. Every oven is different. There are hot spots within your oven even. So understand your tools very well before you want to be consistently good at what you bake. So find a good recipe, learn to master it within your own capacity. And don't be scared to experiment. Maybe you want to bake it 5 minutes less to see if there's a difference in texture, or 5 minutes more, or maybe not 5, maybe 2. But keep trialing and error. Do trial and error within your kitchen. Make your recipes like an R&D sort of process to hone in on.
That's a good one.
Hone in on what For me, I reduce a lot of sugar from the original recipes, the base recipes that I've started with. To cater to my clients, to cater to even my own family. So I bake everything the same for my family. So I'm confident that, the sugar's being pulled down, but not enough that it tastes like a bread. If you don't want
cake out for special occasions, right?
Exactly. and also, understanding that sugar has a certain element to things like giving moisture to the cake, the natural preservative in a cake to make it last longer. What does butter do versus oils? What does room temperature eggs or milk do versus cold, butter and ingredients? It changes everything. It's like a little science lab that I have in here, to be honest.
Yeah. I've learned so much in past 7 years or more, maybe. What's next for Posh Little Cake? Are you planning to open any school or something, a baking school or a channel?
Thank you for having all those expectations of what I could achieve. Look, I do have a in-house face-to-face baking class that I do offer. I don't do it often enough, I know. What I've learned over the last really, I guess 24 months is that every stage of my life expects a different effort and time for me to input. So for me, the last 2 years has been about my family, a lot more than probably me and my business. So I have, in a way, scaled back a little bit from where I was 4 or 5 years ago, but this works so much better for me. So I guess knowing what my priorities are as Jenny in my life right now, I am now also looking after my parents who are elderly, so that has taken away a bit of energy and time that's needed for them. I have 3 high demanding children who have got different passions in different areas. So, giving them a chance to express themselves has taken up a lot of time as well. And then, the daily ins and outs of keeping your house.
And not to forget you have a dog.
And my little puppy. That's my 4th child.
So, as a wrap up, Jenny, of course, your stories are so good. I don't feel like stopping it, but just for the time.
Sure.
As a wrap up, what message? I mean, you have given lots of tips already, but as a wrap up, what message would you like to someone who might be afraid to take this bold step? Like, everybody, as you said, like that fixed income that takes you, helps you back to move into your passion. So, what message would you like to give them?
Look, especially if you have. For me, I started this journey when I have children, so it may have been this may be a different message if I started without children, when you could really hone in on and dedicate everything. But for me, I think my biggest quote or, the thing that I always think about whenever I think about have I made the right decision in doing what I do is, it's a little bit morbid, but the day I pass on from this life, would my children be happy? I mean, how do you want to be remembered, right?
The legacy
in a way, And for me, being in the corporate life,
you're just one of many.
Was not going to be what I would like on my eulogy or my tombstone. I dedicated endless years to a corporation. Look, that was one part of my life. I would rather show my children that whatever passion you delve into or you start, you can make something out of it, however big or small it is. And for me, my children love the fact that I'm my own boss. And I dictate all my, orders and greet my clients. And they see so many different aspects of what I do versus what my husband does, who has a corporate life. So for me, the life learnings of showing my children that you can have a business as well as raise your own family and have, a house to maintain and everything is very important as a life skill that I want to pass on to them. So, look, that was for me, knowing that I have something else to pass on to my children as well as myself and filling out my own cup. I could probably do a lot of other things with my business going forward, but for me at this moment in time is knowing what is my capacity and what keeps everything in balance holistically. And I do what I can in my business, but I don't do it without any compromise and keeping the rest of the family in check. So
just follow your heart.
Yeah, follow your passion. This fills my cup 100 times more than what I could think of doing something else with. So for me, yeah, just follow. If you have enough passion to start it, you'll know deep down it is going to be very scary to make that first step. But I can guarantee you, you'll look back and not regret it. And if you know that it's not the right thing, you can always go back. There's never a set. You're not born to do anything in any one thing for your life. So be flexible and be kind on yourself to try. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for your time.
Thank
It was
you.
lovely chatting with you.
Thank you for having me.
All the time.